And I have Councillor Lind has sent her apologies, and Councillor Pandy's here. That's great. Any other apologies? No? Excellent, thank you. The next item is late items to be introduced by the Chair. I don't have any. Third item then is declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? No. Excellent. Okay, so the fourth item on the agenda then is minutes from the previous meeting held on the 9th of December. And I shall just pull those up myself. Okay, if we can take them for matters of accuracy first. Page 1, please shout out if I don't see you. Page 2, page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Is everybody happy for me to sign those as an accurate record? Excellent. Okay. Go to matters arising then, as we go through. Again, I'll take page by page. Please do shout up if you've got any matters arising that you'd like to discuss. Page 1, 2, 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, 7, 8, 9, and the final page, page 10. Okay, everybody happy to move on then? If no matters arising that isn't on the agenda today or that you'd like to pick up from the minutes. Excellent, thank you very much. Okay, back to the agenda then. So the next item is the Children in Care Council. I'm going to hand over to Laura and Lorraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I am here today to read the report for the Children in Care Council, giving a summary of participation activities over the last quarter. The activities that include are the Children in Care Council meetings, residential participation, the virtual school enrichment events, the newly qualified social worker induction training, and local authority collaboration. I'll go through, and there's quite a bit of information in the report, so I'll briefly go through and welcome any questions at the end. So with regards to meetings, we've had a meeting in October. This was the Change, Grow, Live advocacy service to attend and share marketing materials. Our members were able to comment on their thoughts on the materials and what they thought was useful and not so useful. The key points were they felt they were too formal, to be made more child-friendly, add in more images and make it more colourful, and remove an image of an ear in particular. Change, Grow, Live will be invited to a later meeting to feedback that you said we did. The next meeting was the November meeting, in which the Community Development Officer attended to discuss the Youth Employment Hub. The young people were asked about how they feel their school was with careers options, what they thought schools might do better with regards to this, the main barriers for young people when looking for jobs, any support they feel young people need to access training and employment, and how they felt about applying for jobs, and how they would like the Youth Employment Hub to be, if they would like it virtual, face-to-face, or a mixture of both. As you can see on the report, the key points were they felt schools had good advice and information available. They should try and support further with a young person if they're unsure with what they want to do. And they felt it was difficult to gain employment with little or no experience, and the process of applying needs to be simplified. There was discussion about more accessible support for young people seeking employment, including interview practice. different methods of applying, such as mobile phone apps or texting. The young people felt that sometimes application process and interview process could be quite daunting and difficult. And they liked the sort of hybrid approach for the hub to be face-to-face and virtual. This information was then sent out by myself, providing the QR code for the consultation for members to access themselves, the residential homes, and was also sent to the head of fostering to disseminate to staff to get young people to give their thoughts on it. Again, the community development officer will be invited back for a You Said We Did. The December meeting was more of a celebration event for our young people as a thank you for their commitment to the Children in Care Council. So we went to Megazone and we had food, and it was really well attended and everybody enjoyed it. And as part of that, we had a consultation about the name of the Children in Care Council. We've spoken previously about our young people feeling the Children Care Council, they didn't like the name of it as such and didn't necessarily agree with the fact that they were being highlighted as children in care, and felt that it was important to discuss that. So that is something we are looking at in the near future about changing that with the help of our young people. We're bouncing some ideas across over the next few meetings to try and get across what they might like to be called. So they're the meetings within that quarter. We have increased our engagement with residential homes. So myself and Holly, we have been attending the residential homes to enable the young people that aren't able to access or don't feel able to access the meetings to take any information from our Children Care Council meetings to them, to give them the opportunity to have their voice captured, as well as anybody that attended the meetings. So we are now attending them regularly. It's bi-monthly. We're aiming to attend each residential home and meet with the young people. And we're just starting to sort of build that relationship, and that's working really well. We also had the newly qualified social worker induction training. The young people were invited to be part of a focus group to discuss their experience of being in care, to help them sort of shape the services and the newly qualified social workers, so the new members of staff that are coming in, and give them an understanding of their experience of being in care, what barriers that they've faced, and just how they feel and what would be useful and what they want from social workers. So we put together a PowerPoint presentation, which I then took to the training and presented to the newly qualified social workers, along with a presentation of the Children Care Council as a promotional tool, if you like, about the Children Care Council, who we are and how they might enable young people to access us in the future. And I will be attending all of the newly qualified social worker induction trainings in the future to present this. So every new social worker that comes in will be part of this PowerPoint and understanding of what the young people have actually said about what it's like to be in care in Derby City Council, within Derby City. We have been attending the virtual school enrichment events, which Graham has facilitated for me to be able to do. And I've attended the virtual school cookery event. We've been to some sewing workshops, and this is in aid of promoting the Children Care Council, ensuring young people can put a face to a name with myself to make them more comfortable coming along to meetings should they wish. And we actually have had a few new members come in to the Children Care Council from attending these events, and myself and Holly are attending another one in April, so that's going really well. As you can see, a lot of our focus over the last quarter has been on getting out there to the young people, where they're going to be, what they're sort of doing, rather than expecting everybody to come to us. And actually, in the next report, it delves deeper into what we're doing in terms of changing the Children Care Council to meet the needs of everybody that want to attend, and ensure that we move with the times, shall we say, and ensure that everybody has access to us. There's also been some local authority collaborative working with myself. I met with the Children's Rights Officer for Derbyshire County Council to understand more about their Children Care Council, and myself and Holly have been doing some research about other authorities and how they run theirs. Again, trying to shape the Children Care Council moving forwards. There is also going to be a regional Children Care Council meeting where the East Midlands Regional Participation Leads group members, we're all getting together, and all the local authorities are meeting for a day to do a Children Care Council meeting of all the authorities together, which is really exciting. The young people are really excited about that. With regards to school participation, myself and Holly have been in touch with Derby City secondary schools, and we have actually started to roll out our cohorts with West Park School. So we are now visiting the schools again outside of the meetings in the same way as we are with residential homes, to ensure that everybody has access to us, not just on a regular meeting. With regards to care leavers, in this particular quarter, I worked alongside a personal advisor within the Leaving Care Service to create a survey which went out in Care Leavers Week. This was to find out about how care leavers wanted to be consulted with, and sort of what they would need to do that. And the key, Appendix 1 shows the whole survey, the questions that were asked and all the responses. But the key themes out of that was consultation was preferred via mobile or electronic survey. They would like to be consulted with every other month. 38% of those that responded would like to be involved with the consultation, and that housing was highlighted as the most popular topic area for them. I will continue to support the Leaving Care Service as necessary with development of this moving forwards. My manager's been having meetings as well about how I'm best to support this moving forwards, but it's sort of an ongoing thing. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment in this particular quarter, and I welcome any questions or feedback.
Thanks so much. Can I just first of all start by saying, could you please give to the young people my apologies, because we've had to move this meeting from the last meeting that was due to the flooding. So I'm really aware that unfortunately they've not been able to join us today for obvious reasons. But if you could give my apologies, and I obviously always try to make sure that we can have the meetings when they can attend, but on this certain time I'm just so sorry they couldn't. But on hearing what they and you have been up to, I'm really, really happy to see the changes that are going on, and the work to go and reach more of our young people in their own settings, rather than expecting them to come into the setting here. And again, it's a new sort of strength-based approach there. I'm really, really pleased to see that happening, and hopefully get more young people. Like you said, you've already had some more come through that, so that's absolutely evidence that it's working. Really pleased with that, and if there's anything that I can do as Chair of Corporate Parenting to help with that, please let me know. And I think what I was really, really pleased about was actually you talking to the newly qualified staff. Again, really good to get that understanding straight away as soon as the social workers come into the authority, letting them know what the Children Care Council is all about, how they can help, how they can understand. Really, really good, positive work there. So thank you so much. Would anybody else like to ask any questions? Councillor Hezegrave.
Yeah, I agree with Chair that some really good work being done here, and I'm just going to ask a few questions first about the November meeting and the careers options period. I don't know if Connections is still around or if it's under another guise, but do our looked after children all get someone from Connections who works with them specifically, or is it covered by what I think is called the Youth Employment Hub? I do really think it's important that our looked after children get particular attention to all that area of looking at what their options are, because I think all young people benefit, and I think all of us who are in education or who have been in education, all young people benefit from having some idea about not just being educated, but being on a path to somewhere. And that path can change, and that can be a good thing. As young people discover more about themselves, they may change their path slightly. So they may be tempted to have this initial thought about, oh, I'd like to do X, Y, and Z as subjects, but it might be a bit narrow. And they may choose another path later on. So I think it's really important that they get good careers advice at the level they're at. And I would hope that there is some provision. So that's my first question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Suan, did you want to come in there?
Thank you, Councillor Hesselgrave. I can confirm that, yes, they do get allocated personal advisor from Connections to support them with their educational choices at the appropriate age.
Thank you. I thought I ought to ask that question to seek assurance, but I was fairly confident I'd get a good positive response. The second question is really about, what was it now? This, housing on 5.1 care leavers update. Housing was highlighted as the most popular topic area. Clearly that is a big step for someone leaving care. And sorry, my phone's ringing and I can't stop it from ringing. Put it down. Oh, let it ring. Sorry. Thanks for that tip. Right. Housing, obviously that's a big move for anyone leaving care if they choose to leave whoever's care they're in at the time. And I would hope that every effort is made not only to provide housing and help them to find housing, but that it's good quality housing that's appropriate and in an appropriate area. So I'm asking again for reassurance about this, because I'm sure we'll get a positive response, but I think it needs to be on record that the question was asked.
Yes, again, Councillor Hesselgrave, I can confirm that we have a care leavers pathway in conjunction with Derby Homes that provides that support for our children in care who are moving into independence, but we also have other pathways into other types of accommodation also. We feel that this is a robust response to the housing options for our children in care. Thank you.
Thanks for that reassurance.
And our children in care and leaving care are prioritised when they come into Derby Homes to do that. So if I can give you that added assurance there, that they're number one priority. Was that it, Councillor Hesselgrave? Sorry, did you have any more? No? All right, thank you. Heather.
It was really just to make more of a comment. It's really good to hear about the newly qualified social worker induction. And I'm just sort of thinking it'd be great to kind of widen that further. I'm just thinking one of our medical advisors and our named nurse do a yearly presentation to our local GPs. And that'd be really good to kind of actually hear it from, you know, the voices of children rather than, you know, health professionals trying to kind of give the view of children. So that'd be really, really useful. That's done in October, pretty much October every year. So that'd be really good if we can kind of link in. And then my other comment was just about the topics that, you know, young people wanted to discuss, and obviously we've got sexual health and mental health, and just if there's more we can do, you know, to support the leaving care PAs, you know, whether it's signposting or to equip the PAs with knowledge, you know, to sort of signpost young people to access services. So it's really just to kind of highlight that, you know, as a health team we're here, you know, to mean if you need any sort of further information to support those young people. That's it, thank you.
Thanks very much, Heather. Appreciate that offer, and we'll make sure we get those links in as well if we can. Yeah, Councillor Hesselgrave.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that I think the whole the links, the strong links that are formed between our people who are leaving care and our children in care with designated professionals does make it less likely that they will eventually become neets, because they've got a contact with people that they trust, and they will want to keep that contact, I would hope, as they transition through their school careers, their higher learning careers, etc. And they have a pathway, and that does leave them less likely to be exploited by, we know, all sorts of groups of people.
Indeed. Thanks, Councillor Hesselgrave. Any further questions, Laura and Holly? No? Once again, can you please say thank you to the Children Care Council for us and appreciate your time. Okay, thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item then is the item number 6, the annual report of the virtual head, education outcomes of children looked after, attendance, PEPs and SEN. Graham.
Thank you very much, Chair. I sent through a presentation. I'm not sure if we can, are we technically not able to see that? Okay. Okay, even if I bring my laptop up there and project it? Oh, no, oh, no. I'm not going to embarrass myself then. Okay, right. The only reason I ask is there's a few slides at the end which were not in the report, which I wanted to highlight, but which might have brought it a bit more to life. But never mind. Never mind. I'm sure that maybe if that presentation could be circulated, I think it might be useful at a later point. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so the report was attached to the papers for the meeting. What I would like to do also, if that's okay, is just to look at the extended role that the virtual school has been given by the DFE, and I'll come to that slightly later. So if I can just pick out various parts of the report as I go through. First of all, attendance through the pandemic. At the top of page 3 on the report, this is a graph which shows the attendance of looked after children for the last 4 years. And you can see very clearly where the different lockdowns impacted the attendance of looked after children. So on the graph on the right hand side in the summer term, you can see that the attendance dropped during lockdown 1 to just over 49%, and then in lockdown 3 in the spring of, I think it's 2021, the attendance was 74%. So you can see that as youngsters and carers got a bit more confident in sending their young people to school, that the attendance did improve as we went from lockdown 1 to lockdown 3. You could maybe argue it was because carers wanted them in school and not at home, but that was it was encouraging to see that young people did take up the offer of a school place, and yeah, took advantage of that. Moving over the page to page 4, again, this is exclusions. Because youngsters were not in school, you could argue that the exclusions should be less anyway. But this is just a breakdown of the young people that did get an exclusion from school. The figures do show that the numbers were less. You'll be pleased to note that there were no permanent exclusions. If colleagues in my virtual school team hadn't worked really hard with a couple of young people, there would have been at least one permanent exclusion there. But yeah, I'm really grateful to colleagues in my team who did really work hard with schools to make sure there were no permanent exclusions, and we did find alternatives to a permanent exclusion, which was great. You'll see that the majority of the exclusions were in secondary, so 27 out of the 31 fixed-term exclusions were in secondary. And there was 10 fixed-term exclusions within Derby City and 22 outside of Derby. Again, we would like to compare that to national figures, but there were no national figures to compare it to. In previous years, colleagues might remember that the exclusion rate's normally about 10%, but it's 6.15 for this academic year. Okay, moving on to the outcomes on starts on page 5 and then on to page 6. I think most people will know that there were no primary statutory assessments, national assessments for this academic year. There were some GCSE outcomes which were reported, but they were teacher assessed. So there were no formal exams, but teachers in the second year of the outcomes during the pandemic did award teacher assessed grades, which we were able to get hold of. So outlined in the report are the maths or the English and maths outcomes at GCSE. You will know that the grading system has moved from an A star to G to a 9-to-1 scale. 4 being a scrape through at the old C grade of GCSE, 5 being a good C grade pass in old money. You will notice also that in the 2021 outcomes there were far more, or 27.5% more young people in the cohort. So we did jump up from 29 in the reportable cohort up to 40. If you look at page 7, it gives a breakdown of the SEND profile of those young people. And in a nutshell, we had more young people with more special needs and with the EHCPs within those special needs. So we did have a larger cohort who had a greater level of need. So if we look at the English results on page 5, pretty much held up in terms of a grade 4 pass or above and a grade 5 pass and above. So there wasn't much of a dip there. So if you think about a greater number of young people with a greater degree of special educational needs, I'm actually really pleased that those held up. Not so much with the maths. The maths did dip, as you could predict, with the greater degree of special educational needs. And again, those are what we call attainment results. Those are the results the young people got. What we're not able to demonstrate is the progress that those young people made, because there are no national data to compare that with. So unfortunately, we don't have that to hand. Moving on to page 8 of the report, the virtual school in this academic year got £2,345 per young person to support young people in school. We allocated through the personal education plan almost £500,000 of additional funding to schools. And on pages 8 and 9, that just gives a breakdown of the type of activity that was supported through Pupil Premium Plus funding. No surprise there that supporting academic outcomes got the majority of the money, and also supporting a young person's social, emotional, mental health also got a fair chunk of that money. The bottom of page 9, it just shows the review status. Every target that is set within a personal education plan, which has money attached to it or not, gets a review by the school and gets signed off. Where you see that there is no review there, that is where there's been a target set in the summer term which hasn't been reviewed yet in the autumn term of the next academic year. And again, we won't talk about the O word, but Ofsted were particularly happy with that when they saw that. Page 10 just shows the breakdown of Pupil Premium Plus across each of the year groups from reception, not up to year 11. I think it's interesting to note the amount of money that goes in very early to help support young people. That has not changed this year. We are, and I guess it's as a result of the pandemic, a lot of young people who are coming into school need a lot of additional support, and we are seeing that because they haven't had the play-based activity in the early year settings, and that's been quite significant this year. So, in terms of the personal education plans, on page 12, you can see that the number of personal education plans that we completed, 1,100 of those, 132 in early year settings, 968 in the statutory school age. Again, we quality assure each of those PEPs. At the bottom of page 12, you can see GD is gold, G is green, A is amber, and R is red. So that quality assurance process I'm really pleased with in terms of driving up the quality of PEPs. And again, that came through in the recent inspection, which was great. Okay, sorry, slightly going back in my presentation. On page 11, it outlines all of the additional activities which the virtual school is involved with. It was interesting, just before I went in for my interview with the inspector, one of the admin members of my team, or the admin member of my team, was doing some finance training with my apprentice, and it was just a throwaway comment that she made to the apprentice, which was, "Oh, we pay for so much more than we ever used to when I first started this job." And I just thought that was really, really telling, and really perked me up actually, going in to see the inspector, thinking, yeah, we do more than PEPs now, which is great. So a lot of this list was expanded upon in the last year's virtual school report. But at the bottom there, a couple of new provisions that we've got underway. One is the Cromarty model. The Cromarty model is a framework for measuring the progress of youngsters who are very disengaged, and it's a way of measuring their progress. In the past, all we've been able to do is measure in terms of progress, what's their percentage attendance at school, how many GCSEs have they achieved, and that just didn't fit for a lot of the profile of those youngsters. So we have developed a Cromarty model, which is now being used more widely across the service and in enhanced case management meetings. The other thing that we've started this year is something called Bksb. What we found in the virtual school was when a young person came on the virtual school role and they were in Key Stage 4, so year 10 and 11, we weren't sure at what level they were working at, because we didn't really have very much history about them. So the Bksb model is a diagnostic tool for Maths and English, and it helps us gauge where they are in terms of their Maths and English skills, and also provides a bit of a work plan as to how to improve those skills. On the presentation which you'll get, and because this meeting was supposed to be in February, the title of this is, "In addition, during 2021, in case an inspector asks." But it's a bit dated now, really. But there's a series of photographs about two of the projects. One that Laura's already mentioned, which is the Sewing Club, which we're in the middle of the second run of that, working with a local creative who's helping us do that, based at the Museum of Making, which just has it's just a really great atmosphere for the youngsters to actually design and make something, because it is the Museum of Making. And that has been really successful. in terms of, we talked about career aspirations. One young lady who has got a visual impairment, who is at one of the local secondary schools, one of her comments was, I've actually found something I'm really good at. And she's now having some individual tuition with this artist to help her pursue that as hopefully as a career, which is great. And the other thing that was on this slide was what we call the go-kart project. We had a young man, not so young now, but he's year 10. He came back to the city probably about just over a year ago, didn't engage with anything to do with education. But he was very talented at making and constructing things. So back in the summer, I bought him a kit go-kart with a petrol engine, and the photographs on here, which you'll see, are of him constructing that go-kart. The go-kart since February is now complete, and we've just got to road test it now and find a private piece of land to actually... Not on the road, no. A private piece of land to test it out. So there's several members of staff as well going to be racing around and trying to beat his lap time, which would be great. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, that's great. A bit more mundane, and just to finish off, and this isn't actually in the report. You may or may not know that the virtual school has been given some extended duties by the Department for Education. And those extended duties are to have a strategic role looking at children in need and child protection young people. Three main aims, which are really broad in general, but these are what we were given, to make visible the disadvantages children with a social worker can experience, to enhance partnerships between education settings and local authorities, and to hold high aspirations for these children. The second one was to promote practice that supports children's engagement in education, recognising that attendance at an education setting is really important. And the third one is to level up children's outcomes and narrow the attainment gap so every child can reach their potential. Initially, we were given 6 months funding to do that. I'm not quite sure how we were going to do the last one there in 6 months. But the government has given us at least a year's extra funding. That was announced a fortnight ago now. So what we've done as a local authority, we have, we're looking to create an offer, which is a universal offer, a targeted offer, and then a specialist offer. So it'll be a 3-tier approach to this work. We're looking at staff training. We're looking at how we can improve attendance and reduce exclusions. There is going to be a SWOT analysis coming up soon, where we're going to talk to education staff and social care staff around how they see that partnership working, what can be improved, other things that we can do. And then we're also looking to involve governors, governor support and accountability. We're looking and have written an 8-module e-learning trauma and attachments course. We're linking in with the inclusion work that's happening through the opportunity area funding. Very soon, well, at the start of May, there is something called the Inclusion Charter, which is going to be launched. Hopefully within that Inclusion Charter will be an expectation that if a school signs up to that charter, that they will give time to their school staff, and social care staff will also be involved in this, their school staff to do this 8-module e-learning course as part of directed time. And then moving forward, we're trying to get through an information management system which will track the completion of that 8-module e-learning course. So at the end of the following year, we can say with certainty that we are a trauma and attachment aware city, because X number of staff in schools and in social care have done the basic universal training. So that is really quite exciting, I think. Other things we've done, we've created a pupil voice film. We're just getting the sign off that we can share that more broadly from the young people. We've got a self-evaluation tool where a school can evaluate itself against certain criteria. We've got a reporting template to governors to highlight children with a social worker as a specific group, looking at their attendance, their exclusions, and their attainment and progress within school. And then we're linking in with some broader exclusion work, the transitions portal that we've got in the city, part-time timetables, and the mentoring work. So again, aligned with the mentoring and the reducing of NEET, the virtual school is going to look at funding the mentoring support for a lakh young people pre to post 16 that have been identified in the city. And then lastly, which was hot off the press at the time in February, we have had some work that we did excuse me, back in 2019. You might remember that we had 19 unaccompanied asylum seekers come to the city in the January of that 2019, and secondary schools weren't overly keen to have all of those young people in school. So we commissioned the new Communities Achievement team, Adam Rapiza's team, to do some education work. And we also involved community partners in that. So we involved Derby County Community Trust, we involved the creative sector, Derby Theatre, etc., and put together a package of work. Heather came and did some work on the health, linking those young people into health services. And I actually thought at the time it was a really good piece of work in terms of being a city of sanctuary, welcoming those young people into the city. So I got Dr. Jerry Codina from the University of Derby to actually write up that piece of work. Having written up that piece of work, she said, well, she thought it was good, and so she put it forward to be published. And the good news is it has been published, and it is now an article within the International Journal of Inclusive Education. So that is really good. It's been anonymised, but it is there as a published article, which I think is really good news. And that's me.
Graham, thank you so much. Appreciate that. I've got a couple of questions for you, but I'll start with a well done on getting the work published. Really, really good work there. And again, it's that thinking outside of the box, the sort of strengths-based model that you use there, bringing in the creative systems, and you know that's just shown what a difference can be made, particularly to those young people, the US young people who, let's face it, they've come to the UK here, they've had trauma and goodness knows what else they've had to put up with and got here. So actually making that system work really well for them, I'm really, really pleased with that. So congratulations to you and the team for that, really good, well done. I've got a question around exclusions. So I can see by the evidence and the graphs that there's loads of work being done to reduce those exclusions, and great on the permanent exclusion side, that's fantastic. The figures for outside of the area are still higher than what I'd like, and obviously higher compared to what they are within the city. Is there more work that we can do to work with our other partners, with our other LAs and potentially the IFAs, to have a look at, see how we can work to get those exclusions down?
I think it's, if you look at the profile of where the youngsters are educated, generally 35% are in the city, 65% are outside of the city. So in a sense, you might say that it's just per school, it's not that different. We've certainly done the two permanent exclusions which we warded off were outside of the city and took quite a bit of time. One was Lincolnshire and one was Oldham. So I don't think the youngsters in the city get any better a deal from my school staff. I think there was, well, to be fair, there was a comment by one of the schools in the city which said, oh, we can't permanently exclude because the virtual school will be all over us, which I thought was quite nice. But that was a city school. But that would be the same for any school, to be fair. Yeah.
The next thing that I wanted to say was another well done really in terms of the range of interventions that are there. Again, that I've seen that change over the years, and the range of interventions is fantastic now.
Yeah.
And I do remember you talking to me once about the simple one-to-one mentoring done by
Yeah.
particularly agency within the city, and that was really well done.
Yeah.
But actually seeing that list now, there's so
Yeah, so much more now. Yeah.
just again, really glad to see that growing. And again, if there's anything that we can do as a board to help with that growth, please let us know.
Lovely, yeah.
The one other area really of concern that I've got, and it's not concern because of you or the team, but I think it's about the early years. So we've seen coming out of the pandemic
Yeah.
that across all schools and children and young people, that the early years are really suffering with that social interaction.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like you said, they haven't had that play.
Yep.
The learning by play, and just wondered again if there's more that we can do as a board to help with that. Is there something that we need to be looking at in terms of some help for our looked after children?
I think any support or additional support that we or schools in particular identify, they know that they can ask for additional. It says in here that we get 2,345 per young person. We allocate that on a needs-led basis. So if a young person doesn't need any additional support, we don't send the schools any money. But there are several instances this academic year where we are funding a full-time TA for certain youngsters to settle them into school. So we do allocate our resource according to need. So I'm fairly comfortable that we've got enough funding support to put in that support where it's needed. Another example would be the young people missed out on their year one phonics when they were in year one because the check, sorry, not test, the check didn't happen. So they were asked to do that check in the autumn term of year two. When we got those results back, we were quite shocked at how low some of those scores were. So we've had some additional funding from DFE called Recovery Premium. And we wrote to the DT in the school and said, the youngster you've got is really low. Can you put a target in for a recovery premium to get that phonics score up? At the same time, we wrote to the carers of those youngsters and offered them a package of resources which my team identified would be helpful to do on the kitchen table. So we've sort of tackled that from both ends. So, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Graham. This is the second time I've heard your report because you gave it at CYP, and it's no less interesting the second time. Just picking up on a few points, and it may overlap with what I said at the last meeting, I'm not sure. On what Yvonne was saying about EY, particularly the phonics issue, I know that's a big issue, and clearly it's a developmental thing. Sometimes kids are more receptive, their brains are more receptive to early phonics, and missing a year or missing 6 months does knock them back, and the brain is less plastic and receptive sometimes. I know that there's an AI diagnostic tool that you can use with children, which identifies some issues to do with how they read, but that may be for a bit later on. I can't remember the name of it, but I know that the head at St Joseph's has been using it, St Joseph's in Derby. Okay. So it's worth asking, and I can't remember the name, I'm afraid, at the moment. But that might be something that would be useful, but clearly you depend on schools taking it up and having a go with it. But you know, if she could give you some feedback, it might be something you could argue the case for with heads around the country and colleagues. So that's it. I'm really pleased to see that you've got this wider role, because I think, you know, you can show leadership here and you've got particular expertise in managing a school, you know, sometimes it's not like always in lockdown because you don't have them physically present, but you have to get on with the job of them being educated. And I'm particularly interested in the Cromarty model and the Bksb, and I think if schools would look at that, because obviously there is a link between progress and mental health, and goodness knows how many children are displaying that or are going to display it during their career soon. It would be good to get that taken into schools, in my opinion, but clearly I'm not a professional anymore. I think if you can get that to be rolled out, it'd be really good. But I think, you know, there's lots of good stuff going on, and it's really good to see what's happening. And the last thing I just wanted to say, there'll be proper exams this year with proper certificates that will be eventually validated, God knows how long down the line. But are you thinking of having some kind of virtual or hybrid event to have a certificate evening or something like that? As that used to happen, I think, but that obviously couldn't happen and hasn't happened in schools for a bit.
Just on that last point, we generally have, or had pre-pandemic, a primary celebration event at the National Forest Adventure Farm, and then we used to have an evening at the Quad where we did the certificates and then watched a film. So we haven't got any plans, nothing's in the diary as yet for those, but that's not to say that those can't happen this year with the statutory assessments happening. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. Anybody else? No? So again, thank you very much, Graham. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Everybody happy to accept the recommendations in report 2.1 and 2.2? Yeah.
Chair, yeah, I do think it'd be worthwhile, although usually I know it'll be a longitudinal thing, the Cromarty thing, but it might be interesting to find out what the initial response is to the Cromarty thing with students and whether it's really helpful. So maybe coming to us on that specific issue and not a report about the virtual school, maybe 6 months down the line. I don't know, that might be a bit early.
What we've done with the Cromarty model this year is it's being rolled out across a meeting called the Enhanced Care Planning Meetings, specifically in the children's homes. So what we could do is we could bring to the board an example of the Cromarty model and show how it's worked through the year. That might be interesting for people to see.
Yeah, that sounds excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Hasselgrave. Thanks, Graham. Appreciate that. Put that down. Okay, so let me just get back to my computer and find out where I'm meant to be. So the next item then on the agenda is an update report on education, employment and training at the Leaving Care Service. Oh. Okay, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Now I feel like a pop star. Is that working? Okay, thank you. For those that don't know me, I'm Anthony Mains. I'm standing in for Andrew Kaiser today, and I'm the Leaving Care Team Manager here in Derby City. So I've provided I'm going to provide an update in terms of our education, training and employment progress for our city's care leavers. I've provided some supporting information within the report in terms of data, because it's easy just to say we're getting better, but that at least shows you how we're getting better, albeit it's gradually, but it's steady. So I don't plan to just go through every percentage. I'm quite happy for you to read it and you can ask me questions after, if that's okay. So, a clear gradual improvement in terms of our outcomes. The thing I did want to point out so clearly is just to see our, how we compare. So I've provided some data with regards to nationally how we compare in terms of EAT figures regionally and our statistical neighbours, and we're doing favourably against all. So that's good news. Okay, so we've got our EAT Development Board, which was created in September 2020, which has continued to meet throughout the pandemic. and it's about every 2 months, 2.5 months, with the aim of targeting our NEET cohort of young people, those that are really difficult to shift, those that have got multiple barriers and problems. And the aim is to get everybody involved in any form of EAT together in one place regularly to progress chase, to offer more opportunities. We've developed a triage process, a single referral point that goes through DALS, our Derby Adult Learning Services, so they will receive the referral that's got as much information as possible for that young person, so they only have to do it once rather than being referred 6 or 7 or 8 different times. That will then be triaged and it'll go out to the relevant service involved. If they're under 19, it'll go to the connection service and they will pick it up and they will do the same. But the board really wants to bring on much more innovative approaches, so we're trying to broaden out its membership as much as possible. We've got a meeting this Thursday is the next one, and we're getting Derby Theatre, linked to Derby University. A guy called Tom Craig is going to come and talk to us about the Plus One project, which is really exciting. So he'll form part of the board. So everybody like that we shall pull in and get them involved. So we've also now managed to get a recording process on LCS, our recording system, so we can track. And this will be a piece of work that takes place over the next 6 months or so. So we can track the referrals that have gone in, and then we can update that form on our system as to what the outcome was, where they've gone to, have they gone on to college or uni or whatever it is, or are they still NEET? And then we can also explore with young people what that journey was like for them. So now we've got the system set up and we've got the processes in place, we can now start to analyse the data as the young people are going through and they're being referred, and we can see what works and what doesn't work. Our main concern and our main worry continues to be motivation, participation and engagement of those difficult to reach young people in Derby who just don't want to get involved. Because they're adults, we have to seek their consent to share any data and any information through this referral process. So you'll see in there's a good chunk of young people who didn't want to share. Want to do something, but they don't want to share their information, which makes it tricky. So that's a piece of work that I'm going to be taking back to the board on Thursday to explore, well, how can we get over that? What are they afraid of? What do they think they're going to do with this information? And try and do away with some of the myths that might be going around that young people think are there. Motivation for me and that engagement is the key to it. And it might be that we have to explore further afield in terms of who engages in the NEET board and offers different ways of doing it. Maybe something like Plus One just offers a different way in. Okay, so we'll be able to monitor and track progress and measure the impact of the development board. It's reassuring to know that our data is fairly safe and stable and going in the right direction gradually. There's going to be no silver bullets in terms of we're not going to shoot up to 70 or 80% in NEET over a short period of time. This is a sort of long-term approach to having support for young people. The next big piece of work we're aiming to do is to relaunch which I feel like I've been saying forever, to relaunch the Derby City Council Apprenticeship Scheme, which pre-COVID was really, really effective. You know, we had 7 or 8 or 9 young people on apprenticeships within the City Council. But with staff moving, the COVID, not taking people on, it's sort of ground to a halt a little bit. So we've made a commitment. We've started meeting with the apprenticeship scheme people within Derby City Council. We've got to get out and around to different departments over the next 2 months, ask them what they can offer to care leavers, be that work experience or an actual apprenticeship, and reinvigorate that element of our offer. And that will also make a big impact, I think, going forwards. The other thing about having this scheme is that we can disseminate every opportunity that comes into me, which I get a lot of. You know, we've got a course starting next Thursday. It's in barbering. It's just I get loads of random things. So that gets disseminated across the board. So everybody who's working with care leavers knows it's there, knows it's current, knows how to act on it. Because the key for this group of young people is to get them when they're interested. Because that window of opportunity passes quite quickly if we've got nothing to offer them. So that's one of the benefits of having this board up and running. Just a little bit of data from the early days in terms of the number of young people who have gone through the process. As of the data writing this report, there were 8 young people currently working who were NEET, working with DELS to progress into EAT, and 7 had, I think it was 7, had now gone into EAT. Now, I can't take credit that the board made all the difference. I need to do a little bit of more digging in terms of how that happened. Hopefully it did. But now we've got the process, like I say, we can do some further analysis. And there's the 37 care leavers who didn't give their consent as well. So that's a challenge. That's the worry. Okay, we also have membership on the board from the DWP, because they have been much more active in terms of supporting young people into education, training and employment than in previous years. They're really on it. And they monitor and chase, and we've got a single point of contact generally for the Leaving Care Service who has been helping us with that and who attends. All our meetings have been virtual, unfortunately, and this Thursday will be virtual again, but I'm hoping that the next one in May, June time, we'll be able to find a place where we can all meet safely and actually meet in person, which would be really, really good. So overall, really positive statistics and data, quite a lot happening. Certainly this year, now that things are beginning to ease up, we'd like to think that we'll get really, really active in terms of opening up more opportunities, a greater breadth of opportunities to care leavers in Derby City. For those outside Derby City, we obviously try and link into the local services there, the local offers that they've got available, and our data is quite favourable for those outside the city as well. So overall, a positive picture, I think. I'm open to questions.
Thanks, Anthony. I wanted to say I'm really pleased that the apprenticeship scheme is going to be starting back up again and the offer going out. What I would like to ask is, are we able to work with our HR teams to look at things like guaranteed interviews? If our young people actually meet the criteria, can they be given a guaranteed interview if they apply for roles here at the council? Can we have a look at that, see if we can do that? You talked about the board and the DWP engaging with the board. Do the DWP also talk about and bring to the board things like Way to Work and BBO, some of those schemes? Great. So for those of you that don't know, there's schemes that work with young people and older people actually on some of them to help them get into employment or training, and there's some really good work there, and they've got mentors, haven't they? So one-to-one mentoring, things like that.
They're so much more active now.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Definitely.
Good. Okay, that's ticked off another question for me then. That's brilliant. And then I'm really pleased that the tracking system's now working. So I think for next year, then we'll be able to have a look at that and have someone look at that data, see how it's tracked, how it's progressed, and have a look at the analysis, if that's okay. If we can bring that to the next round of education on that, I'd really be interested to see how that's played out and how it's helped our young people and helped us to look at what needs to be done there. So those are my points. So sorry for taking over again. Any questions from the floor? Yes, Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Chair. Unless I've missed it, but I could not spot it anywhere in the report in terms of tracking care leavers once they get post 19, 20. I think we track them up to, is it 22, 23 years of age?
Yeah, we have to track up until 21.
21.
We have to send data back to central
government
21.
Yeah.
I believe it won't be long until we're doing that until they're 25, because we can work with young people.
Okay, that's fair enough. I was just wondering whether you've got any stats on how many young people who have been in care are successful in getting full-time employment. Because at the end of the day, all we're doing is we want them to be successful once they've left the system.
Yeah.
And if we are not tracking it, we're not keeping any record that our efforts are making any difference, or whether they are making any difference, and then refining it, which bit of our effort is bearing best fruit.
We can get data for those that are at 21 in terms of what they're actually doing at that point in time. Yes, we can get data.
Can you
I can
bring
form-
it here
I
in?
can bring it next time,
Next
yes, if
meeting.
you want, or,
Thank you.
or I can do it further on. We break it down in terms of what they're doing, whether they're in full-time employment, part-time employment, some are still at university,
Yeah, yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. So, yes, we can,
That would be
we can
helpful.
break
Thank
it
you.
down. Yeah.
Thank you.
Obviously, after 25, it gets a lot harder, and that's on whether young people want to do that. But we do have success stories, and we do have young people that come back to us and tell us, you know, what they're doing and how they've been helped to get there. So again, it's a really difficult area to track and monitor because there's no statutory duty to do that after 25. But where we can, we always try and engage with young people when they do want to come back and talk to us. And you'd be surprised at how frequent that is. I've been contacted by quite a few young people, and we've got some really, really good success stories of young people who've come to work for us and moved on to other authorities as well. So there are those out there, but again, it's consent for them to share your story, whether they want to actually come back and tell us or not. But there are some good news stories out there. But if we can get some of that information for the next time for those under 25, we'll bring that to you.
Yeah, I have heard that there are 20 and 20 of success stories. What I'm saying is that's the ultimate outcome that they're seeking to get. Where possible, we need to get accurate figure so we can compare it year on year to see whether we are still on track, whether the performance is slightly going down or that kind of thing. And that is, in my view, quite a crucial piece of data that we need to keep.
Okay, Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm encouraged by the section in the report talking about Derby City Council's apprenticeship schemes. I'm Vice Chair of Personnel Committee, and we take an interest in apprenticeships. And from my point of view, it's a win-win. If we get good people into education, employment and training, and they're then working for the city as well, that's a double bonus. So for me, I'd encourage as much work as we possibly can to get these kids into City Council apprenticeships. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Carr. Definitely. Any other questions there? Councillor Hazelgrave?
Thanks very much, Anthony, for your report, and thank you for the total to the team who are obviously doing a really good job in quite difficult circumstances with people who can be quite challenging to work with, I'm sure, at times. What is an issue for you, clearly, is this reluctance or diffidence about sharing data or being prepared to share data. And that's a good thing in a way, because they ought to be reluctant about how they share data. Maybe some work needs to be done during their time coming up to when they make this kind of decision on, you know, when you should be wary about sharing data and in what circumstances, etc. And maybe Laura Bradley and her team could be doing something in preparation for that, say ages 13, 14, so that they've got a clearer understanding about where they're making a safe decision and where they're making maybe a questionable decision that compromises and leads them open to exploitation, etc. Yeah, which we want to avoid at all costs. So I just suggest that maybe there's some work to be done early on in a coherent and coordinated way with schools, all sorts of things, so that you get that thing where they are more prepared to share and they under the right circumstances.
Yeah. I'd just like to think that's an excellent point, and something that clearly we're going to need to start to incorporate into a young person's pathway plan in a very, very clear way. Times have changed dramatically, haven't they, in terms of your own personal information, and it needs to be included. I can work with Joe with the Children in Care Service to make sure that happens. Really good point.
Thank you very much for the report. Anybody else? Everybody happy to accept the recommendation at 3.1? Thank you. And last but not least, item 8, CRE and children in care
Chair,
report.
Chair, sorry, before I do think we ought to formally thank the team in the work that they've done as well, as kind of a recommendation or an observation on what we've seen.
So item 8, CRE and children in care report.
That's me. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Jasmine Lombard-Francis. I'm covering this report for Mandy MacDonald, who unfortunately can't be here today. I want to apologise first of all, because this is quite a late report, because I think some of the times the meetings have been cancelled, so it's a little bit late, but it's still very relevant. Children in care and children at risk of exploitation remains a priority for the local authority. And this report will just talk a little bit about what work we've done over the last few months in order to ensure that that remains the case. What we know is that our children in care have work carried out with them by social workers, by other professionals and by the partnership in order to ensure that their vulnerabilities, which are present because they're in care, are held as a priority. So what we do is give research out to the whole of the local authority regularly from Mandy, who is a specialist in that field, and so research goes out to colleagues in order to ensure that we maintain all our knowledge on CRE, because what we know is that the perpetrators are very clever, and so therefore we have to be very sharp around what we know and the risks that young people are exposed to. What we've completed over the last few months is a review of our risk assessment tool. What we know, again, is that exploitation is coming in lots of different guises, and so online exploitation is quite prevalent with some of our young people, but we have strategies in place in order to make sure that we are able to limit it. We also continue to use our commission service, which is Safe and Sound and Catch 22, who are working with our young people when they are exposed to CRE, and we work as a partnership. Over the last 6 months, what we've been able to do is also work with education as well, in order to make sure that our children are safeguarded. We're working with children who regularly go missing, and we've embedded the return interviews with our young people. And so they are spoken to quite quickly, because it is important that when children do go missing, we are speaking to them as quickly as we can in order to establish where they've been. And that's something that we've embedded within the service. I think it was mentioned within what Graham was saying around education and where children are placed. We have some children who are not living in the city, but they remain our priority, so we still have oversight of those children who may be at risk of CRE. So independent chairs in my service will chair multi-agency meetings for those young people to ensure that the plans around them are safe. And it's those young people who are out of the authority where we will link with agencies in that local authority. They may be in Derbyshire, they may be in Leicester, but we will work with those partners to ensure that we've got the right services for those children. We're also looking at the numbers of children who are at risk of CRE, and what the report shows is that over the last year, actually, the number had gone up. So we can see that the number did go up, but the current number is actually reducing. So I've got some current data. So we've got 33 young people who are children in care who are at risk of CRE, and we are working with those young people. There are also some children who are at risk of criminal exploitation, which the report talks about. And what we found is that there are more males who are at risk of criminal exploitation, and what we're having to do, and the strategies in place, we're actually looking at, I think, colleagues may have heard of place-based risk, so we're looking at that, so to ensure that our children are protected as much as they can. And I don't think there is much else to say apart from the fact that all our children with risk of CRE benefit from allocated workers. They see them regularly, and they're engaging with them in order to limit the opportunity and disrupt the activity. And I think that's something that is really critical. I'm not going to say anything else. I don't know whether there's anything else anybody wants to ask.
Thanks, Jasmine. I think I've got two things. First of all, I wanted to say I'm really pleased to see now that the return interviews are embedded. That's really good news. And I know that's taken a good number of years to do that. So well done. Really, really pleased about that. In terms of the CRE training then, I know it's been updated with our multi-agency partners. How are we able to track to make sure that that's an ongoing situation with our multi-agency partners as well?
Because it's part of EVYP, CRE is part of our Vulnerable Young People's Group, we're training partners at least twice a year. So that's in place, and Mandy leads on that training, and we're also training specific areas. I think she just recently trained some of residential service. She trained some of the YOS workers. So the training is there, and it's on everybody's agenda. And all of the partners will talk about CRE within their work. So an example of that is GPs have just done a complete new template where they ask for trigger questions within their template when they have a young person who comes to see them, so they can identify whether that young person is at risk of CRE. So it is on partners' agendas as well through the training.
Do you have any questions for Jasmine there? No? Again, thank you. Paul?
Thanks very much for the report. There's a lot of reassurance there. It's a constant issue that we all have because we're all responsible for safeguarding. You know, it's great that we've got somebody who's got some leadership there who can kind of draw everything together. I think the economic situation is going to deteriorate significantly for the least well-off and lower income families. And I do fear that there could be children and young people could fall prey to exploitation there's a greater possibility that they will fall victims to exploitation in that kind of economic climate. So I just think we just need to be really, really aware, and as professionals at all levels, particularly, you know, the ones who come in direct contact with children all the time, they're social workers, they're teachers, GPs, all the health service, because, you know, once they're into that, it's really difficult to get them out.
Can I just comment? I think the only comment that I would say on that is that with our children in care, what we want to do and what Graham spoke about is keeping them in education. So we're keeping them busy. And by keeping young people busy, it actually limits the chance of them being exploited. And I think that's something that we do very well with our children's homes, and especially those in foster care situations as well. So our children in care are more protected, I would say, within our council, because that's the priority that we have, corporate parents.
Thanks, Jasmine. And if there are no more questions, thank you ever so much for standing in. Really appreciate that. And are we all happy to accept the recommendation then at 2.1? Lovely. Thank you very much. Without further ado, I will close the meeting, and we will see you again quite shortly, because the timescales in between our next meeting is now shorter. So I look forward to seeing you all, and hopefully again our young people can join us. And what I didn't do at the beginning, which I'm sure if Lindsay was here she'd be really, really glad that we didn't do it, was the icebreaker that I normally do for our young people. But beyond warning, I will be doing an icebreaker next time. So thank you very much, and see you all soon. Thank you.